We had the first casualty of our build here. This is the lower control arm bolt. Last night when I was taking out the driver's side axle, I was just going to temporarily put everything back together so I could put the wheels back on and move the car if I needed to. And this one wouldn't go through the hole, so I tried to beat it in with a hammer, and then I took the impact gun and just wrapped on it, and this is the result. So I already ordered a new set from STM, the exact OEM ones, $14 plus $8 shipping, so $22 for a stupid mistake. What's up everybody, welcome back, episode 4 now, and in this episode I show you how to take the subframe out in order to remove the transfer case. Now I know that you don't necessarily need to remove the subframe to take the transfer case out, but I think it would be a lot easier if you had a car lift and more than one person. If you did that method, which I have neither of, at least I definitely don't have a car lift, and at the time when I was removing the subframe I didn't have anybody to help me. So I'm going to show you exactly what to take out on the subframe. There's not too many good videos out there, but in the video itself, I kind of struggled through it a little bit because I'm just learning, but I'll show you beforehand everything you need to know, and then if you need more of a visual aid, just keep watching the video. I show you everything. It's not a big deal. So thanks for watching, and let's get to work. Here's your subframe. This is the same process for the EVO 789. They're all very similar. So first thing you need to do in order to get the subframe out is to take this cross member out, which is really easy. This is the front engine mount right here. There's just a bolt and a nut that goes through that, and then there's two bolts up front and one in the rear, and that just drops straight down. The second thing is you gotta prepare the subframe to be dropped down. It's really easy. You just got to disconnect the tie rods on each side and then disconnect this ball joint right here, this large ball joint. There's 4 bolts that you need to take out. This is the rear of the subframe. There's a big bolt that goes through this bushing right off the A-arm right here. And then there's a small locking bolt that goes through that. I don't remember what the size is. And then there's 2 big bolts that go through the frame that a nut goes onto. I would just take those all the way down to like maybe the last 2 threads, and just let it kind of hang there with everything else out and loose. There's this rear engine mount, which is kind of a pain to get to. I show you in the video how to get to it. It takes a while to get out. It's just really tight, guys. There's not really a good way to do it unless you have, without having like a power tool to get to it. I don't have one, but I did mine with a regular ratchet and wrench. It took a really long time, but I got it. And then the steering shaft, they're up inside the car underneath your steering wheel, like down by your pedals. You're going to see this where it hooks up, and there's a little, it looks like a hose clamp that locks onto it. I just put a pair of vice grips on there. You can't remove it. I just locked it out, and when you're sliding this thing down, you kind of have to slide it at an angle towards the front of the car in order for this to clear that hole, because it kind of gets hung up in there. And I know it feels kind of like it's like something is really hanging up, but it's probably just this, as long as you have all the other stuff disconnected that I showed you to disconnect. And then finally, you have to make sure that this line is disconnected out of your power steering pump. It's just a nut, and then you just want to throw a plastic bag over it with a zip tie so it doesn't leak all over, and then there's one clamp on it that's real close to where it hooks at, easy money. And as you're lowering it down, you can't see this part when the subframe's up in, but when you lower it down, you'll have to stop like halfway and disconnect this line. This is just like a rubber hose, like a fuel line or something like that, held on by a hose clamp. Just like the pinch type of hose clamp, so you just got to disconnect that and work it off. This is the return line for the steering. Now this is like the main thing that hung me up, and when I removed it, the subframe, I actually got caught up on it, and I had to go off camera and take it off because it is kind of a pain to get it off, but once you got it off, it's no problem. It drops right now. So I hope this video helps those guys that maybe are thinking about doing a clutch or something, but aren't sure about dropping the subframe. As far as I could tell, there wasn't really that many good videos out there. When I took it out, it wasn't super quick. Obviously it's my first time, so I'm just learning, but next time, now that I know all this stuff, I feel like it would go a lot faster. So give me a thumbs up if this helped you out. So I gotta pull the axles out. So first thing I'm gonna do is pull this pin out, and then I'm gonna put the tire back, both sets of tires back on, and lower it down. Once we lower it down with the tire on, we'll be able to break this big nut loose. When you go to loosen up the axle nuts, you want to make sure that you pull the center caps off your wheels. That way you can access the nuts when the tires are back on to loosen them. These axle nuts are on really tight. I'm not sure what the torque value is on the EVO, but you're going to need a 32 millimeter socket, which is pretty standard for most cars on the axle nut. Probably about 6-8 inch extension, a breaker bar, and then I got this piece of pipe that I use. Okay guys, so in order to get this axle out, we have to remove the caliper, the rotor, and we're gonna have to take this tie rod nut off. So for this, I'm just gonna loosen up the nut to the point where the threads aren't exposed and use a hammer to hit it down. I've already done it on the other side. It's okay. I mean, it's not the best practice, but I also don't have the special tool to remove these. And I've used that plenty of times before, and if I damage it, I'll just replace it. So on these front brakes, they're held on by two 19 millimeter bolts right here and right here. So I'm gonna use my breaker bar on them to break them loose, and then I'll use my impact to get them the rest of the way off. And then I'm gonna hang up the brake. I'm not gonna take the brake line off right now. I'm just gonna hang them up. I'll get to that later. Now we got all that stuff out of the way, we can blast this nut off. And then there's a big washer. There's a big lock washer on here you gotta take off and keep track of. Now I'm looking at this. Most of the time, I'm used to them having a nut on the bottom of this ball joint that you can just hit up. But it looks like there's some kind of pinch pull here. So it's looking like we gotta take this one out, one of these completely out, and then loosen up the top one so we can just pull the whole thing out of the way. Or you can just push on it and it'll slide up out of the way. You don't have to take anything at all off. I don't know. Let's see how it goes. Everything's out over here. We got that lower bolt out, one in the middle and one on top. That's our hinge bolt. We just had to take these two 14 millimeter bolts out. They are attached to a torsion bar, and that should give us enough room to slide this bottom piece out of the way. Got both of them out, so now we should just be able to push this down. So now we got those bolts out, should be able to push on this lower control arm, push it down, and slide the hub off the axle, just like that right there. So now we just gotta go up inside and pop it off the other end. There it is, guys. So the passenger side axle is out now. I'm not gonna do that one on camera. It's the same exact process for both sides, so I'll see you in a few. So in order to take the transfer case out, I'm gonna pull the center drive shaft out. And I know you don't have to take it out to pull the transfer case, but since I'm filming this, I don't want the drive shaft to swing down and hit one of the cameras. So what I did was I took a paint marker and marked it in 2 spots in the same location so I can put it back on the exact same way as it came off. And these nuts and bolts are 12mm. So let's go ahead and take that off. So I did something pretty dumb. I forgot to drain the transfer case before I took that drive shaft out, and a little bit of oil came out of the back of the transfer case when I pulled the drive shaft out. Not a big deal. So right now I'm just kind of letting that drain, and I'm thinking kind of at a crossroad here. Now if you look here, I'll try to zoom in. Right here there's a cross member that basically goes across the whole car and holds the hubs on and everything. Now that can be dropped out, and that's like the preferred method of getting the transfer case out. But they also say that you can take it out by just disconnecting this front to rear member and sliding the engine forward and kind of working it out. But I'm here by myself, and I don't think I'm going to be strong enough to do that by myself. So I think what we're going to end up doing is taking this subframe out. I've never done it before. I've seen a few pictures. I have an idea of what I need to disconnect. So we're both going to learn today on how to do it, and hopefully we don't break anything. And if we do break something, hopefully it ain't expensive. So to take this mounting brace, this front to back one off, there are 3 17mm bolts that we got to take out. So these front 2 ones, and then there's one in the back, you can see there. And before we take those completely out, we got to disconnect this engine mount first. So what we'll do is we'll take the breaker bar and break these loose. So the nut on the end of this bolt that holds this engine mount on is a 14mm. It's on there pretty tight, so I had to use my breaker bar off camera to break it loose, but it's loose enough now that we should be able to just blast it off with the impact gun. So we got that bolt out of the front mount there, so now we just had to take these 3 bolts out, and we should be able to drop this whole member right straight down. So let's go ahead and do that. Here's our power steering pump, and I'm pretty sure that these lines go all the way down to that cross member, so they definitely have to be disconnected. So we have this line that's held on by this nut here. I'm not sure what size it is, probably like a 17 or something like that. Then there is, actually I think that's the only line that goes down there that I can see, because there's a line that goes up to the reservoir, but there has to be another line that goes down there. So there has to be a spot for it to return, at least that's what I would think. So I'm ready to pull this power steering line. First nut is on here. It's like some kind of banjo nut type deal. That's a 17. Then up above, and then you can see here there's a clamp, and that one is a 12. So we'll go ahead and pull those out real quick, and then I'm sure the line I'm gonna have to go ahead and put like a plastic bag and a zip tie over it. So I'll go ahead and do that right now. Just like that, you guys can see I put a plastic bag with a zip tie around the nut or the bolt end on the power steering pump, and on the actual line itself. Just put a Ziploc bag with a zip tie to make sure no dirt or anything gets in there. So to get this cross member out, we're looking at 6 bolts, or actually 4 bolts and 2 nuts. This is a mirror image on the other side too, so You got this nut that has basically a bolt going through it. Pretty sure the bolt's just attached to the frame, so we don't have to put anything on the back of it to hold it. Then we have this bolt right here that is going through the bushing, and then there's another bolt behind it that has basically a lock on it. It's like a locking mechanism that smaller bolt holds on. So we'll take those out first, take these loose, take these nuts loose, and just kind of lower it down slowly with the jack and see what happens. I'm sure there's some other stuff I gotta get in here. Like right here, I gotta cut the zip tie real quick, but let's go ahead and break these loose and see what happens. Alright guys, so I got those bolts out of there, and I got my jack in place with a piece of wood. I'm just going to back these nuts off the rest of the way and slowly lower the jack. I got the GoPro set up, so what you're seeing is what I'm seeing. The steering column, there is a little like hose clamp that you have to put a pair of vice grips on to lower it down. I didn't do that on video because it's just way too tight in there to get a camera, so let's just go with it and see what happens. I think I have everything disconnected I need to have disconnected, but we'll see. So as you guys can see, the subframe didn't want to come off. And I think it's because this rear engine mount is holding it up. So what I had to do, because it's such a tight space, is I put a wrench, like a box wrench, on the backside where the nut is, and I'm using this big ratchet, this half-inch drive ratchet with a 14mm. I'm just taking it loose. I'm gonna do this one off camera because it's just kind of a pain to set the cameras up in a good position to record it. So bear with me. Put it out, and that thing was tough. So when you guys go to take that one out, I mean, it's very limited space. It's one click on the ratchet, and if it's been exposed to salt or anything like that, it's probably corroded, so it's pretty tough to get out of there. So the GoPro just died, and we're like halfway out here. I don't know how much you can see. It's a pretty decent amount. You can see it's really leaning to the right side there. Not sure what it's hung up on right now, but try to lower it a little bit more. Ooh. Well, that's one way to do it. The steering mechanism is completely out now. I see two lines. Let's see here. There's two lines. I can't even tell which ones they are. There's two lines hung up on there, guys. I'll tell you which ones they are after I get them unhung up. So it was hung up on this right here. I think this is, I'm not really sure what it goes to, but you can see the hose dripping there. I couldn't lower the cross member the whole way down until I moved this clamp and unhooked this hose. That was the only thing that was holding it up. The steering seems to be okay. The lesson learned from this is just a floor jack with a piece of cedar on it is not really the best thing to lower one of these. And also having two people would have helped out a lot too. I think putting it back in definitely is going to be a two-person job. So I'm glad it's out of here. It was a pain. The main thing is you got to make sure that rear motor mount, which is this, is undone, and then it should just slide right down. So let's start working on this transfer case. Real quick, don't exit out of the video yet. I just want to say thank you to all the new subscribers and those of you that hit the like button. It really motivates me because these videos do take a long time to edit. So every time you guys hit that like button, that helps me out. I mean, at this time, I'm not monetizing. I'm just doing it in my spare time because I have an interest in cars like you, and I also have an interest in cinematography and video editing and stuff like that. So thank you for hitting that like button. Every time I see that, and every time I see a new subscriber, it just keeps me motivated, moving into the garage and getting more video to edit and just working on growing the channel. So thanks again. In the next episode, transfer cases come out, I can promise you that. So we'll see you then. Peace.